Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Avatar weekly discussion topic video. This week's topic is going to be my top 5 least favorite Avatar episodes, otherwise known as the bottom 5 episodes on my overall Avatar The Last Airbender episode list. So, getting straight into it, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to do it basically 5 to 1. So the last episode I talk about is going to be my least favorite one. That's going to be my 61 on my list of 61, bottom of the list, and so we start with 57 and we'll go down to 61. So, my 5th least favorite episode, number 57 on the list of 61, is The Drill. 213, so Book 2, Earth, Episode 13. The reason I have this here, and this is probably the one that will probably be the most controversial on my list, because I know a lot of people love this episode. And there are a lot of aspects of this episode I do really like myself. As I've said many times before, I don't heavily dislike or hate any episode of Avatar. I think they're all good in their own way. It's just, when you make a list like this, there are ones that do stand out as yeah, I kind of have to put that towards the bottom. And for me, this is one of them. The reason this is low on the list is because this episode should be so much better than it is. This is a really, really important event in the war. This is the Fire Nation making their next attempt to break through the walls of Ba Sing Se, which is the last big thing left for the Fire Nation to kind of take down before they basically have complete control over the entire world, effectively. Ba Sing Se falls, that's basically the fall of everyone that was opposing the Fire Nation, so it's a really big thing. You get references in the past to the 600-day siege of Ba Sing Se by Iroh, and what happened there. They managed to break through, but they couldn't contain it, and then Liu Ten was killed and Iroh retreated. So they had a chance there, and it kind of fell apart for different reasons. Here is their attempt by a technology to break through the walls once again. And it should be this huge thing, an attempt to break through the walls. This should be one of the key battles within the war, the 100-Year War. This is the Fire Nation going for it. But the Fire Nation sends the Drill and 4 tanks to support it. So that's very few they're committing very little manpower to this attack. Then the Earth Kingdom response is really bad, it's pitiful. They send the Terra team, and then they basically wait for the Drill to get closer, and then just throw rocks at it from the top of the wall. And it's left for Team Avatar, the only people in the entire world who could possibly form a plan to take down this Drill. They're the ones who solve the problem. It is the one aspect of the show, Avatar, where I'm just I don't buy that our team is the only team that can defeat that. I could buy our team managing to defeat it. I just don't get that it's kind of left to them like they're special. They're the only ones who could possibly do it. I don't get why they didn't send a ton of Earth Kingdom soldiers outside with them to fight the Drill, for backup and support. This should have been a huge battle, but as it is, it effectively becomes a more smaller engagement. It's effectively Team Avatar versus Ozai's Angels, and even then, Mai kind of stays out of the fight. So it's Ty Lee and Azula against Katara, Sokka, Toph, Aang. It's good. I like the Azula Aang fight at the end. That's really cool. The final blow on the Drill is amazing. It's just an episode I feel should have been much bigger. A simple thing. Okay, Team Avatar, they come up with a plan to take down the Drill. They focus on the Drill. They focus on the main characters. It is Team Avatar versus Ozai's Angels. But you have this secondary battle going on of just Fire Nation forces versus Earth Kingdom forces. Make this out like this is a battle. You can still keep the whole thing of the war is meant to be a secret within the walls of Ba Sing Se. The Earth Kingdom should be fighting like this is the end, to keep the war from coming into the walls. But they send a couple of people and they make a joke out of it. The commander of the Earth Kingdom in this episode, the Earth Kingdom forces in this episode, is made out to be a joke. And I don't get why they make such a big joke out of what should be a really important event. Because within this episode, the Drill basically gets through the wall. It pierces the wall. It's stuck in the wall. They haven't fully got through to the point where Fire Nation forces can just go in. But it didn't really look like there was backup. Like, what was going to happen if the drill fully did get through? Were they just going to keep drilling into the middle and like drill into the Earth Kingdom's palace? Because they only had, like, as I said, 4 tanks of backup. Like, at most, you know, like at most you probably have 50 like people involved in the Fire Nation attack. At some point they would have been overwhelmed. Like, was there a support force in addition to the drill that we didn't see? Just, it's an episode that doesn't make a whole lot of sense in terms of like military strategy, and it should have been a battle when it wasn't as big as it was. Has good aspects, it's fun. Ozai's Angels versus Team Avatar, as I said, great, but not the best episode for me. So, moving on, my 4th least favorite episode of Avatar, 58 out of 61 on my list, Jet 110, Book 1 Water, Episode 10. So, with this one, my issue with the episode is basically I feel like some of the characters are mischaracterized. They're out of character, and the main ones would be Aang and Katara. Aang primarily, as I'll get into, because I feel like they almost revert him. This is episode 10. We're 10 episodes in at this point, and I feel like this episode reverts him back to like episode 1 Aang, when he's purely about fun and doing all this kind of crazy stuff, that he starts swinging out of the trees and it's just like, cool, the freedom fighters live in the trees, we can swing around, it's fun. I like Jet because he's cool. And it completely ignores the fact that he has a crush on Katara, and the fact that Aang doesn't seem to care that there's this kind of blossoming potential relationship between Jet and Katara. He doesn't care. To me, is a big, like, what is going on here? You're not writing the character in the way that the character should be written. I get this is early on, but this is like 4 episodes away from the Fortune Teller, where the Katara-Aang relationship is a focus. We're not too far away from the Cave of Two Lovers. This should be a point where, like, you at least bring it up that Aang is a little bit upset that this is happening. On Katara's side of things, I don't really think she's the sort of character who would become obsessed with a boy like that. I can understand it to some extent, because this is realistically one of the first characters that's like in or around her age that she has seen, that's a boy that she's seen in forever. Like, Sokka and Aang are basically the only 2 other boys around her age that she's seen, so you can understand it from that point of view, but even as the series progresses, you don't see her becoming obsessed with like every guy she meets. It never happens again. This is just a one-off thing with Jet. Admittedly, it sets up a pretty cool arc within Book 2 when Katara and Jet meet again, but in this episode I think it's a little overdone. The overall problem, though, is that it means that Aang and Katara support Jet and are against Sokka. That's a cool idea for an episode. I don't like the way they execute it here, in that I don't feel they did enough to kind of justify why these 2 characters effectively are willing to just like set aside Sokka, not listen to him at all, because Jet's so cool. Like, I don't think he did enough to kind of justify the switch of characters that they did with Aang and Katara here. I get that the point of the episode has to have Sokka on his own, basically countering the fact that Jet has got everyone on his side, and that's cool. I like the Sokka side of this episode. Sokka is completely in character, and it's a good Sokka episode, but when you mischaracterize, I think, 2 of the main characters, it is a problem. And I always will cite that one of the main reasons I think Avatar is such a good show is because it's so realistic and well done with its characterization of the characters. So when there's a problem on that front, for me, it's a big problem. So, even though there's a lot of aspects of this episode I really like the freedom fighters, I like Jet as a character, and by the end, it's a pretty intense episode with what Jet is willing to do to kind of get his revenge, and where his arc goes from here. That's cool. I think it's one of the best animated episodes within Book 1, and kind of surprisingly so, that they devoted so much time and effort to this one. The Aang Jet fight in the trees is an amazing sequence, and there's some overall fun stuff. But to me, the characterization issues is a real problem for this episode. Next up, my 3rd least favorite episode of Avatar, 59 on my list of 61, the Waterbending Scroll, 109. And I will have an overall thing to say about these 3 middle ones on the list. in that obviously this is the episode immediately after 10, and as you'll see with the next one, it's pretty close as well. My issue with the Waterbending Scroll, primarily, is that this is the first episode where Aang goes to learn waterbending. And it's fine, cool, it happens after episode 8, he knows for sure what the goal is after episode 8, master the elements, makes sense that he'd try to begin as soon as possible here. The problem is that I don't feel the episode has the intensity that it should have, given that it takes place immediately after such an intense episode, and the way Roku presents the plot, you've got to do this quick, master the elements before the end of summer, before the comet arrives. That's not too long away, and you have to master 3 elements. That's a big thing, and then you kind of just started off pretty slow, you know, they're looking around, getting supplies, they're messing around in the shops, they go to the pirate shop, they happen to find a waterbending scroll, steal it, you know, then they do start the training, and it's fine. It's just, it's an episode that really feels like you should have followed up on the fact that the plot was presented in the previous episode with an intensity within this episode. As it is, a lot of the book 1 episodes tend to forget that there's a time kind of crunch going on here, and this is one of the episodes I think suffers for that. There are other issues. One of the other ones I would have that is that even though this is the first time Aang goes to start waterbending, the fact that he has basically no problem waterbending, to me, creates an issue in that we never actually find out much about the philosophy of waterbending. We know a decent amount about airbending just because the culture is so linked to airbending, and it comes across very clear, even though we don't get the culture of airbending explored all that much. It's very clear what it's about. The spiral movement, the way Aang fights makes airbending very clear. Aang's character arc is, the way his character is very kind of different than earthbending, so that's why earthbending is a problem to him. With firebending, obviously the Deserter episode sets up exactly why firebending is a problem for him, and how he stays away from using fire every time he can until he gets a teacher who understands what he's feeling and can learn and move on from there. That's fine. With waterbending, his arc is basically, he learns a little bit here, kinda uses it a little bit as the episodes progress, learns more from Pakku, not everything, learns the rest from Katara, basically off screen. No challenge established whatsoever that Aang struggles with waterbending. And it means that this whole book 1 water, this whole plot of learn the 4 elements, you already have one, let's do water here, earth in the next book, fire in the last book. The plot of this book is like, you kind of get rid of it because Aang just adapts to it super easily. Whereas I think the Last Airbender movie, the movie that no one likes to talk about, what you can't say about that movie is that it didn't try to create a plot around waterbending. Because in the movie, they connect the loss of Aang's people and him discovering that for the first time, they connect that to the fact that he struggles with waterbending a little bit at the start, but has the potential and the skill to actually learn the techniques relatively easily. It's just that kind of philosophy behind it. He's not letting his full feelings about what happened to his people out, and because of that, his emotions aren't flowing, because of that the water isn't flowing and he can't waterbend. I think the movie does that reasonably well. They bring that arc to a pretty good end in the final scene with the big wave, in that it's Avatar State assisted, it's this huge emotional kind of moment as he's kind of finally letting himself feel. The Flow Like Water music is playing, and he does the big wave, and that's the big final kind of part of that battle. That works. That works because you set it up, there's a bit of a struggle, but he's mastered it now. It's fine. It's nothing huge, but he's mastered the element. Great. The show doesn't do anything. I feel like the show should have made that connection. Made a bigger deal out of the connection to his people and how affected he is by the loss. You could have used episodes later on, like the Northern Air Temple, as a way to kind of have him get past that. Because the Northern Air Temple is the episode just before they arrive in the Northern Water Tribe. Have him accept something like, even though his people are gone, there are still people who kind of carry the Airbender spirit on, so they're not fully gone, and he himself has the potential in the future to bring the Airbenders back. Have him learn that over the course of this book, and have that be a journey that he goes on in addition to his waterbending. As it is now, it's just, this episode, every time I watch it, highlights that missed opportunity within this book, that not having that big waterbending kind of moment for Aang. He just gets it and it's fine. And it makes the episode feel pretty low-key. The good aspects of this episode are, I really like the waterfall sequence with the pirates and Zuko, and they all go over the edge and Nappa comes back. That's a really fun kind of set-piece moment within the episode. And as well as that, I suppose, the whole idea of the water whip throughout the episode, that Aang gets it quickly, and he has to give Katara a piece of advice, and when she finally kind of gets past her pride over the fact that she should be the more advanced one, the advice helps her to use the technique as well. Though I will say a minor problem with the episode is that I don't feel Katara is also the type of person to get that frustrated because Aang slightly was better than her. Simply because he's a master airbender. He knows the basics of bending and would adapt to just the idea of learning a technique easier than she would. I think he has that going for him, and so it wouldn't make the issue as big. That she, to some extent, should be like happy that she's able to teach someone who has had formal bending training and it work, and him not have a problem with it. But that's just a minor point. So let's move into my second least favorite episode, which is number 60 on the list of 61, and that is The Great Divide, 111. So as you can see, 58, 59, 60, 110, 109, 111. This series of episodes immediately after the big plot episode of Book 1, for me, is a bit of a problem. They all episodes that, for me, ignore the whole sudden like time crunch, that you have to do this quickly, and they all take their time. Jet, they mess around with Jet, and it is a distraction. Waterbending Scroll, not as bad, but still a little bit of a problem there, in that you have the pirates kind of distracting everyone. And then The Great Divide, as much as I don't hate this episode, it is one of the biggest just ones where it's just like, why are you taking so much time, aside from the main plot, to focus on this stuff that ultimately you do nothing with? And that's the problem with this episode. My problem is not that I don't care about the Ganjin tribe, or the Zhang tribe, or the backstory with Wei Jin and Jin Wei. I actually do. I would love to know what's up with this whole situation. The problem is that the way they write this episode, and especially the writer's reaction to this episode being released and the fans' reaction, that creates the problem. They are the ones who ultimately make this episode feel like nothing, in that they had the potential to do stuff with this. Look at the amount of characters they brought back for the invasion, referencing basically all of the books. They could have easily brought back at least the leaders of the Ganjin tribe and the leaders of the Zhang tribe as part of the invasion. They were established to be decent fighters, and because they were displaced by the Fire Nation in the first place, leading to this episode happening, they would have a reason to fight in the war. They don't do any of that with it, and I think that's the biggest problem. The only time this episode is referenced is to highlight how boring it is, whereas you could have made this episode interesting, because another side of it is that I think the backstory of these tribes, why they're fighting in the first place, has the potential to be really interesting. In that you have the Zhangs, you present it in an interesting way. The Zhangs tell their side of the story, we get the flashback, and it's presented in a different animation style. The Ganjins tell their side of the story, presented in a different animation style, but the stories are different. And you can see why both tribes have an issue with each other, but both don't know their own history. Aang comes in, lies in the end, tells them his version of the story, because he basically, conveniently, this happened 100 years ago, he was around during that time, and he gets them to basically work together by lying to them about their history. Cool. What about you tell us what actually happened? What's this orb thing about, this redemption ritual or something like that? The gates, the whole idea of them running with the orb in their hand. Was Aang actually sort of on point with what he was saying? Or was there some big issue between these tribes? As well as that, what's an Earth Kingdom tribe? We know the water tribes. The Foggy Swamp tribe is basically just a water tribe that is within the Earth Kingdom. We've never, outside of this episode, heard about an Earth Kingdom tribe before. We only know of like them having like provinces, cities, and stuff like that. Tribal Earth Kingdom groups of people? that's not something you've set up before. That's something entirely new with this episode, and something that kind of highlights the fact that this was just an episode almost for the sake of an episode, because they did nothing with it going forward. And that's part of this episode, is just that you can tell that this was a fairly low effort kind of writing thing, that they were just like, oh, let's create a conflict of Earth Kingdom tribes, two of them had issues with each other, Aang does something with them. Whereas I think they just could have done something of note, like the fact that like Haru and Tyro from like episode 6, they come back. That makes them their involvement in the series worthwhile. The only reference to this is to criticize the episode. So yeah, it's a okay episode, but it definitely struggles on a lot of fronts, just because it's not treated with importance, and it, as people say, it feels like the most kind of fillery episode of Avatar, even though it technically isn't filler, because it was a planned episode and wasn't just made to fill in a gap, as far as we know. The only other thing I'll say about this one is that I do like that it is the episode that first kind of presents the whole idea of Aang solving an issue between this group of people that comes up. That it plays on the whole idea of how difficult it is to be neutral in these situations. The Canyon Guide is our kind of older character who's used to dealing with being neutral, having to deal with all these people wanting passage across the Great Divide, and how he kind of helped Aang to see his problem. And just little things in the episode actually work quite well, like the fact that you present a little issue between Sokka and Katara at the start of the episode, and they're kind of on different sides of the issue. Katara's with one tribe, Sokka's with the other tribe, and Aang is really left on his own in the middle, and just gets frustrated at the end. And you know, you can sort of question, like, was he right or wrong to lie about the whole situation, but I ultimately don't have too big of a problem with it, because he basically resolves this issue. The two tribes are not aware of their own history, they don't know the full story, so they're basically willing to kill each other over something they don't know about. So Aang, yeah, maybe he messes up a bit of their overall tribe history, culture, but he stops these two tribes, which are in a bad place now, displaced by the war, from killing each other and going out of existence. So overall, you know, I don't hate this episode like a lot of people do, that it's just completely useless and stuff like that. I think the writers didn't help this episode, as I've explained. So, move on to the last one. My 61 out of 61, bottom of my list, least favourite episode, is Nightmares and Daydreams, 309, Book 3, Fire, Episode 9. This, for me, is bottom of the list because it basically has the same issue that Remembrances has for Korra. Why that's the bottom of my Korra list is more or less the same reason Nightmares and Daydreams is bottom of this. I feel it's an episode that kind of wastes my time. It wastes its own time as well. It could have done so much within this time, but they wasted it on a plot that doesn't do all that much. Because here's the thing, the Aang section of this episode is like 2/3 of the episode, maybe a little bit more than that. The Zuko side of the episode, which is excellent, is the side plot and doesn't get a massive amount of time. Aang's plot is basically that he can't sleep, he's nervous ahead of the invasion, which is interesting, cool, has a lot of potential, but the way they execute it is really bad in my opinion. They take a far too comedic approach with this episode, to the point where nothing serious character-wise happens with Aang in this episode. The resolution doesn't help anyone. It's just, we believe in you, Aang, here's a bed, sleep, because we've all said I believe in you, and that's it. That's the end of the episode. What was the point of spending so much time on, like, chiropractor Toph, psychiatrist Sokka, kind of mental health nurse Katara, all of these comedic daydreams, comedic nightmares, and then the one kind of tonally random, really creepy nightmare? It doesn't really lead to anything because the resolution is so basic. There's no character arc here. This is kind of meant to be the kind of prelude to what are you going to do when you face Ozai. He hasn't thought about that yet, but he's thinking about, like, oh, this is the final battle, maybe, what's going to happen. He's nervous about some things, but hasn't fully thought about everything. So it's a weird episode, the Aang side to this one, in that it's so jarring to get this just before a big battle. Ember on Players works because they actually take a relatively serious approach of the characters watching this kind of comedic recap of the story, but serious reactions to the events that are being shown. Here, it's just kind of like, oh, Aang's nervous, let's find funny ways to help him through this, and let's spend a bunch of time about like talking about like sheep and like counting and maths tests in the flashbacks, kind of odd anime references. It all just doesn't work, and there's a lot of time spent on this as well. This is the most basic of basic plots ever. I would very much relate this to the Korra and Asami side of Remembrances, where it's effectively our Avatar character in each series saying, I have a problem that has just come up right now, and then Asami in Korra's case, and then the rest of Team Avatar in Aang's case saying, no, you did this good thing. No, it's okay. No, I believe in you. And then the character is past that. It's like so forcefully like sledgehammer level of like, this is how we resolve the issue, and it's so badly done, I think. Because the reason I'm so critical of it is because the Zuko side of this episode is excellent. I think it's so amazing, the Zuko side of the episode, because you, one, get across the strength of the Mei and Zuko relationship, in that she is aware of kind of how upset Zuko is about this whole war meeting situation. The fact that he hasn't been invited, Azula has, he's done all this stuff to come home, but he still hasn't been kind of treated with respect, and she's kind of trying to be a little bit more romantic, you know, like, let's mess around with the servants, let's order this, our favorite food, let's spend a lot of time together, and he's just kind of so focused on the meeting because for him he's trying to kind of get in his father's good books and, you know, be accepted as the prince again, and it's not happening. But then you get the big twist, the kind of moment of like, they won't start the meeting without Zuko. They're waiting for him. They just assume that you'd come because that was the whole point of you coming back, is that you're now back in with us. So he goes to the meeting. It's like exactly the way he wanted it, sitting beside his father. We don't get the details on the meeting just yet because its plot importance is more to the finale rather than Zuko right now, but it does there's stuff to imply about the character. But you know, he comes out, Mei is waiting out there for him, and she's kind of all happy for him, like, you finally have what you wanted, you must be so happy. But she notices that he's upset, and it's such a cool moment when Zuko is just kind of like, I did everything I was wanted, I was the perfect prince, the perfect son, but I wasn't me. And it's such a simplistic way of dealing with such a complex issue. Actually, the complete opposite of the Aang side of the story, when you think about it. They take such a complicated roundabout way of saying I believe in you as the confidence booster for Aang, yet they take such a simplistic way of presenting such a complex issue for Zuko. It's really well done on that front. But yeah, just the idea that there's so much you can imply about this, that the reason he was banished and scarred in the first place was because he spoke out at the war meeting. You get the impression that this is Ozai's final plan. He wanted to speak out so badly during this, but he knew that he couldn't accomplish anything. It would just be speaking out for the sake of speaking out. He'd be in Ozai's bad books again, Agni Kai once again, and all this sort of stuff. That it wouldn't be the effective thing to do. But it confirms to him in his mind that he hasn't made the right choice in coming back to the Fire Nation, and he has to leave. That it basically is the idea of, I have to help the Avatar, I have to help take down the Fire Nation because I fundamentally don't agree with what they're planning to do. And you know, the fact is, the one sad part about him leaving the Fire Nation is that he's going to have to, it's going to hurt Mei, him doing that. So I like that this episode presents that what's going right for Zuko back home is Mei, his relationship with Mei. What's going wrong for Zuko is kind of everything else, and the kind of reversal that happens with that. It's so interesting. So, and I think that's the problem with this episode. This is an episode that the Aang side of the plot really sours me on the entire episode, when the Zuko side of the episode is actually really good. It's just that Aang side of the episode wastes so much time, and you know, I may be being a bit over exaggerating how bad it is, but because I do find some of the fun stuff, you know, to be very fun, I really enjoy actually the daydream he has where he kisses Katara and admits how he feels about it to her, but it is just a daydream, and like he imagines himself as being the same height as Katara. That was fun, and you know, some of the other stuff is pretty good. Like I like Psychiatrist Sokka. I think that's pretty fun that he gets the kind of the beard back, and just how quickly it happens. It is fun. It's just that should have been like a couple of scenes within the episode. The comedic take on it. Otherwise, you know, address the fact that this is serious for Aang. The problem with this is just that they make such lightness of a relatively like big issue for Aang ahead of like this big battle. And that's the big problem with this episode. So yeah, that's my list of bottom 5 Avatar episodes, my 5 least favourites. So once again, the list is 57 The Drill, 58 Jet, 59 Waterbending Scroll, 60 The Great Divide, 61 Nightmares and Daydreams. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on my list. Do you think it's a good list? Stuff that shouldn't be there, stuff that should be there? Let me know your list in the comments. Post your list and we can discuss it. I think it'll be a really interesting discussion if we can get something going in the comments. But yeah, that's basically all I wanted to say here. So yeah, next week I will be starting my Avatar The Last Airbender Missed Opportunities videos. I'll start with Book 3 Fire, Book 2 Earth, then do Book 1 Water to kind of finish it up. Then after that's done, I'll do my top 5 Korra episodes and my top 5 Avatar episodes. So that's the series of discussion videos that we will have coming your way in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, for now, in the description you can find a link to my Twitter and my Tumblr if you want to follow me on social media. Also in there is links to my Patreon page and my PayPal donation link if you want to help support the channel. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.